Hello, everyone, and welcome to Hartman Executive Advisors and our session on artificial intelligence in warehouses, mitigating risks and maximizing gains. My name is Ann Balduzzi, and I am going to be covering quite a lot of information today. So hopefully we are all here for a lot of information to get shared. And for just to give you a little bit of information about my background, I have been talking about the future of artificial intelligence now for over 20 years. I was lucky enough in that my first job out of college was actually pioneering the internet and a lot of other new technologies. I worked at Apple as a product manager. I was one of the first employees at AOL. But it was when I was actually working and living in Cupertino, Silicon Valley, that I was first exposed to AI. And it was that first exposure that stuck with me. And a little over a decade ago, I founded an AI company and also received a patent in data match analysis. So I've been navigating this space for quite some time, and I've got a lot of information that I want to share with you today, specific to not only your industry topic, but also kind of give you a little bit of a foundational understanding about AI itself. Now, every time I do a presentation like this, I always put a disclaimer on the first slide because AI is actually changing so quickly right now that much of what I'm going to be sharing with you today could easily be out of date within the next, few hours, days, or weeks. That's how quickly things are changing. And it's changing because we are growing through this very exponential growth phase. This is actually a very rare moment in history. Very few humans get to kind of participate in this kind of transformation. This is going to be more transformative than the invention of electricity, the Industrial Revolution, or even the introduction of the internet. In fact, I personally believe it'll be more transformational than all three of those technology movements combined. And it's growing. What's unique about it is it's growing exponentially. And so this is why we have to be particularly prepared early and often for these changes. Now, I take a little detour in whenever I give these talks to really help people best understand exponential growth because it's extremely hard for the human brain to understand exponential growth. And so if you were to take 30 linear steps, you could probably imagine that, if you're just getting up from wherever you're seated right now, taking 30 steps in any direction around you, you can estimate pretty clearly where you would wind up. But if I asked you to think through where 30 exponential steps would take you, that might be a little harder for your brain to imagine. You might imagine it would take you to the other side of your building, or out to the other side of the town, the other side of your state, maybe the other side of your coast, but it would actually take you almost to the moon. So this is what exponential growth looks like. This is what we're going to be living through these next few years. It's going to be a little bit, rocky for a while, but hopefully we'll wind up with a really positive, far future after it's all over. So with that said, please hold your questions till the end of the presentation. We're going to leave time for Q&A at the end. But if you hear something that I say, feel free to go ahead and type your question into the comments bar, and we'll save and collect those for the end. One of the things that I like to share with all of my presentations is that AI was not an overnight success. Now, many of you may only have started hearing about AI just over the last few years, but it's actually been around for over 70 years, and it's been evolving through that time. It wasn't evolving very quickly. From 1950 to 1998, things were really slow. We didn't have a lot of computational power. We didn't have a lot of data. The algorithms weren't very sophisticated, and frankly, there wasn't a lot of funding that was driving these innovations. Now that took us to the next era of AI, roughly 1999 to 2017. And this is where the researchers in this space were using sort of games to determine how well AI was performing against humans. They had it beat humans in chess. IBM's Watson beat some of the top Jeopardy players. And then in 2017, a little known company at the time called DeepMind in the UK, actually came out with something called AlphaGo. And by the way, DeepMind is currently part of Google now. It was acquired. For those of you who are not familiar with the game of Go, it is probably one of the longest continuously played games in the history of humanity. There are more moves on a game board than there are atoms in an observable universe. And Lee Sedol, this individual off to your right, he was one of the top Go players in the world at the time. And he agreed to play the AI, at a game, not thinking he would lose, of course. But the AI, which was referred to as AlphaGo at the time, actually beat him 4 games to 1. And then what they did is something really interesting. They stripped out all that knowledge that the 100+ scientists had really poured their hearts into to teach and train the AI. They stripped it and just gave it the rules of the game and they then called it AlphaGo Zero. And after they stripped it of the rules of the game, they just had it play itself to quickly learn how to become the #1 Go player all over again. And that's called reinforcement learning, by the way. And that still today is being used in AI. And through that reinforcement learning, very quickly, within a matter of weeks, the AlphaGo, or AlphaGo Zero now, became again the #1 Go player on the planet. But it was really one of the moves in the game that opened eyes up among researchers in the AI space around the planet. And that was Move 37. And they call it Move 37 because that particular move was viewed as sort of a mistake move by the AI at first, but it wound up, when the game was completed, to be one of the most genius moves anybody had ever seen played in that game. In fact, it was a move that no human would have naturally thought to do. And this is what opened people's eyes up to the idea that the AI could actually think beyond a human brain. And so Dimas Hassabis, who's now known as Sir Dimas Hassabis because of all of his contributions to the AI space, he used sort of a chess analogy to describe it. He said AlphaZero's playstyle is alien. It sometimes wins by offering counterintuitive sacrifices. It's like offering up a queen and bishop to exploit a positional advantage. It's like chess from another dimension. And I only describe this one area of the AI history is because this was a real turning point for AI. At this point, we began to move into the generative AI era. A couple of other advancements took place. Transformer architecture came out of Google. Lots of other use cases for AI were evolving and developing. And of course, data was much more plentiful. And investors were really pouring a lot of dollars into this technology as well. So we wound up with a lot of really interesting advancements between that time period. And then just in the last few years, we've had an explosion of large language models and generative AI, as you probably are knowing it. So overnight, these large language models and prompts became very important. And if you're not familiar with what I mean when I talk about large language models, or when I talk about AI in general, a large language model is what drives Microsoft Copilot. So if you happen to be using this tool, that's what's generating the activity and the tool behind that AI. The same thing goes for Apple Intelligence as it continues to evolve. But the large language models, or the foundational language models that you might be most familiar with, our ChatGPT, that was created by a company called OpenAI, and we're actually up to GPT 4.5 now. That's the latest model there. There's also a large language model called Claude, and 3.7 was recently released. That's their latest model. Google has something called Gemini. Meta, which is the parent company to Instagram and Facebook, they have a model called Llama. And Llama is actually an open source model, meaning that other companies can build off of that model, and all the tools are there for them to create their own models from that. So as a result of the open source models, more and more, kind of researchers are able to create other large language models, small language models, custom models, and this space is continually evolving. But one of the more kind of interesting components that has occurred just over the last several months is that these models are becoming increasingly multimodal. And what that means is not only do you just type in a text prompt and get a result, and by the way, a prompt is like, asking the model a question, and how you structure that prompt is extremely important. They even call it prompt engineering, because a poorly structured prompt gives you a bad result. But if you structure the prompt, kind of intelligently, you can get an amazingly sophisticated result from these large language models. And that level of sophistication is growing every day. But not only do you have to can you use text, you can also have it, you can upload a podcast and have it basically give you a summary of all the high points there. You can also talk to these large language models and communicate with them just like you would communicate with a real person. You can upload images, graphs, charts, or just have it create images for you, graphs and charts as well. You can upload videos and it can transcribe a video for you or give you the high points from a video. And you can use it to even create a video. Many of the latest large language models are now incorporating search as well. So they're going out on the internet and doing search. And then there's even more sophisticated elements like deep research is a new tool that you'll hear more and more about. You're going to hear more and more about the ability to kind of even share your screen and have the AI walk you through how to use a particular program if you happen to be stuck. So all of these different ways in which we interact with these large language models is continuing to evolve. Now, if we pull back and look at the overall AI timeline, we are at the far edge of this first phase of AI. And that phase is referred to as artificial narrow intelligence. And this is simply where the AI is augmenting humans. And we've been in this phase for over 70 years. So we are right on the cusp of entering into the next age of AI. In fact, some researchers think we're already entering into it now. Some people are predicting it'll happen just in the next year or two. But that second phase of AI that you'll hear more and more about is referred to as AGI, or artificial general intelligence. And this is where the AI is actually equal to a human brain or human intelligence. And you'll start to see that more and more. We already have AI that can think above PhD level, excuse me. And then the final stage of AI, which we may or may not ever get to, but most researchers think we eventually will, and that's referred to as artificial superior intelligence. And this is where the AI is superior to humans, and it knows it's superior to humans. Now, there's a lot of Terminator movies and Mad Max movies and things like that that are built around that premise, but there's also a utopian future that could come out of that, more of a Star Trek future, if you want to think of it that way. So it doesn't necessarily have to be a negative future. That's just Hollywood's spin on it. But I would say researchers are sort of split, and most of them agree what we do with AI today will dictate how AI works with us in the future. So that's going to bring us now to some AI use cases. So we've talked about the history. I've showed you the timeline. Now let's look at some real present day use cases of how AI can work potentially in your environments. It's also, by the way, AI is set to really be the backbone of all warehouse decision making. It's going to help you optimize pick paths. It's going to predict demand surges, staffing needs. It's going to automate resource allocations, and it's really going to help organizations like yourself or businesses like yourself ensure that you are operating at peak efficiency year round. And it's going to minimize the manual oversight and streamline fulfillment in all different directions. So this is just something, you're in one of the industry sectors that has one of the greatest potentials to AI to really help optimize your businesses. Now, you're probably sitting back and thinking, well, we've got a lot of challenges, facing us right now. We've got a lot of data quality issues. Our data is, kind of amassed maybe in different silos. So that brings up the point that you really want to start focusing. If you haven't already, focus on your data infrastructure first. Data is probably one of the key cornerstones of any AI project that you might implement down the road. So keep thinking about that and getting your data as healthy as you possibly can. You might be dealing with some legacy systems that are already in place. In that case, you want to sort of start small. Look at high impact use cases for AI that you can pilot and maybe show some quick wins so that you can get some better understanding of how AI can, in fact, integrate with some of your existing systems and how those systems might evolve over time. A lot of people are afraid of, going down this path because they believe it's, there's a lot of high upfront costs, but you can actually scale incrementally, and then reinvest those early gains, because there will, if you're implementing these AI initiatives correctly, you are going to receive some significant gains, and those gains are going to allow you to help fund those broader AI rollouts later down the road. A lot of people are thinking, well, I've got, talent shortages. I don't have the talent to really implement this. Well, in that case, you want to establish cross-functional teams throughout your organization, bring in sort of a diverse groups of people from around the organization to help brainstorm on these ideas, and then use outside, assistance where you can to really help guide the momentum. And then there's going to be a lot of changes. This is happening not just to, your industry sector, but every single industry sector around the planet is going to be dealing with change management. So it's an opportunity to upskill and engage your talent. You want to do all kinds of workshops and AI training, which, by the way, is easier than ever to coordinate with AI tools. And you want to start working with your solutions on the vendor, working with your vendors rather on the solutions that should be developed that are going to best work for your use cases. But there are a wide range of AIs. So, it's kind of a little bit of a, when you look at all the different paths that you could pick, there's quite a number of them. There's descriptive AI, diagnostic AI, predictive AI, prescriptive AI, cognitive AI, behavioral AI, and this list goes on and on. So it is mind-numbing, to say the least, to figure out, where do we start first? What's the first steps we take? Well, one of the first steps you could start to look at is really warehouse optimization. And probably the backbone of a lot of these initiatives revolves around a term that's used is used quite frequently around AI, and that's called predictive analytics. And what we mean when we say predictive analytics, it's gathering enough data, and that's why it's important for your data to be healthy, to give you that advantage, so that you can actually enable some data-driven decision making. And that could be across inventory management, your labor allocations, cost reduction strategies, because the more data you have, the more that the greater or more accurate the predictions will be in the long run. And this can create an extremely competitive edge for you if done correctly. The inventory management, for example, AI can balance out the levels to prevent overstocking or stockouts and reducing those carrying costs, or just improving cash flow in general. You can utilize things like computer vision for quality control. So these are big cameras, and that can detect damaged products. It can detect something that might be mislabeled or an incorrect shipment before it even leaves the warehouse. Then you've got optimizing operations. This is your demand forecasting. And again, you're predicting inventory needs. You're maybe getting data in from sales trends, or the fact that, a different season is coming online, or other external factors. And with all of these different data points, again, it helps to reduce the stockouts or the excess inventory. You've got real-time supply chain visibility, potentially, if you implement something on this edge. And this is where AI is actually integrating with IoT devices. And IoT means Internet of Things, but that's just simply saying that these are connected devices that are tracking data in real time. So you're getting live updates on your inventory movement, any delays or potential disruptions. And that, again, gives you a competitive edge. And I'll talk more about some of these elements later. Predictive maintenance, those sensors, that kind of those IoT sensors can also be connected to equipment, or even cameras can be looking at equipment to determine how many times that piece of equipment has been used. So you can then begin to identify patterns when that equipment is likely to fail, catch it early, know when the maintenance, needs to be performed on that piece of equipment, and that's going to stop any downtimes that you might encounter. And then there's a wide range of energy and cost optimization factors. This can be automated lighting, HVAC, equipment usage. All of this is just obtaining those optimal work conditions. And by the way, if you're introducing robotics into your operations, you don't really need air conditioning or heating for robots. So just something to point out. There's some cost optimization that can be found there as well. Slotting and picking. This is a big topic in your industry. You can actually use AI to reorganize the inventory locations dynamically. So it's placing those high demand items closer to the picking zones, and that's going to help, better structure your fulfillment efforts there. Also, there's voice directed picking. So this is sort of maybe a step between, your workers and the robotics level, but this is where your actual employees can have real-time instructions sent to them via their AI powered headsets, and that's going to reduce errors, improve efficiency, and this can all be integrated into a warehouse management system. And again, ensuring that real-time inventory accuracy and picking the best routes possible. I talked briefly about robotics, but this is really where things are moving in your sector. A lot of interesting things with, whether it's an autonomous robot or an AI-gated pick system, and there's all different types of robots that are moving into this space, but it's really helping improving the accuracy and the efficiency of of your processes. There's also, all kinds of interesting things happening where you can use robots to help, calculate, when they're working in concert with the algorithms, they're calculating the most efficient routes, they're avoiding congestion, it's optimizing productivity, and these scenarios go on and on and on. And then there's guided vehicles, there's automated mobile robots, and sometimes these can just be utilized to fill in for if you've got a lot of workers that might be out sick, or you've got some added complexity in your, kind of workflow. That's where these other use cases can start to pull together. And then there's something called the digital twin. And if you're not familiar with digital twins, this is sort of it's used in a variety of different environments, but in a warehouse scenario, it can actually simulate scenarios and allows you to kind of play around with different what if scenarios so that you can anticipate challenges, again, optimizing those efficiencies and ensuring a seamless automation implementation when you're at that stage. And I'm going to show you an example of this in a minute. But imagine being able to optimize a process. So you can analyze the material, the information, the resource flow, and you can immediately, through using these digital twins, which is like a simulated environment, you're going to be able to play around with different staffing levels or different, pick patterns, whatever the scenario might be. It's going to make sure that you are testing those efficiencies up front before you actually implement them in a real world environment. And again, this is going to reduce, risk. It's going to create a little bit, more of a data-backed decision-making, before these, new processes or procedures are put in place, before new employees are hired for different activities, or before robotics are implemented, so that, again, you can test these scenarios in advance. Now, this is a video I'm going to show right here of a digital twin warehouse. I'm just going to let it run for a second. So here you can see, people working in these kind of, what if scenarios, with workers here, workers there. You can also use this not necessarily in a what if, but in a real-time scenario where you actually have cameras installed that you are seeing real time what is happening inside your warehouse. And if you're introducing robotics into the equation, this can help route those robots to the right directions. It can help employees, be routed to a direction or activity level that they need to take part in. And if you have an accident, let's say here we got an accident where boxes have fallen, it can reroute robots and employees around that accident and start to address that workflow in real time. It can also send a message to the warehouse, manager, so that they actually know what's happening, on site. So these are just different ways in which you can use a digital twin of your warehouse. Then we have delivery optimization. Now, this is kind of taking it, a step further. And by the way, UPS and FedEx have long used very efficient, use data rather to improve their efficiency when it comes to delivering. But this is getting to a more micro level. They're using things now like three-dimensional package profiles. So that's your length, your width, your height. That's combined with a fragility rating, and then orientation requirements. So this is going to help prevent those load shift incidents that might be occurring during delivery. Then they're having micro location details. So this is giving the drivers, or even for your own warehouse when people are making deliveries, giving them the dock height specifications, parking restrictions, any kind of security requirements, the delivery points, all of that, along with hydraulic lift capacities or tailgate clearance angles. The more data you can infuse into your location or into the locations of where your trucks may be traveling to, that's going to give greater insights and greater data points to make it more efficient. And then you could even dial down to learning the preference of the drivers themselves and their different individual driving profiles. And this is going to help reduce driver turnover. Micro weather analysis. Now we most of the people that are using this, they're definitely using the greater weather reports to determine the best path for a delivery. But when you look at micro weather forecasts, this is going to help introduce data points from road traction coefficients and things like that, just to improving that delivery. Same thing goes for bridge analytics, toll costs, fuel price arbitrage, road degradation, even down to a community event calendars, so that you can route around maybe a local festivity or a school zone or things of that nature during different times of the day. And then we have workforce management in general. And this is sort of like pulling back to the just basics of the business and things like staffing. So you can have your AI not only helping with the hiring process, but also helping with staffing levels, so that you've got the right number of people on staff at the right time. So you're improving that labor efficiency. You can be using AI to help develop personalized training that's relevant to a specific job role, because it actually is fairly simple to put that training into place these days. You can even have a virtual assistant that can answer questions for employees. And that can be a question about vacation time or safety rules and regulations. And having that real-time virtual assistant available to them 24/7 allows them to ask those questions and get immediate answers for them. And that, by the way, the data that you would build up to create that sort of virtual assistant is probably data that you're already sitting on right now, or information that could easily be combined together to answer those questions. Then you have performance management, and that's really helping, making sure that you've got your best employees working for you at all times. So you can identify performance data, identify trends, and provide those actionable insights to those managers when needed. When it comes to marketing departments and public relations, there's an enormous opportunity to really scale up your efforts to be almost like you're, operating as an extremely large kind of business, because the marketing and PR, in conjunction with AI, has now gotten to be very inexpensive. And very highly targeted. So you can personalize your marketing efforts to specific audiences or specific timing. And this can, give you all kinds of interesting insights and create new business opportunities where they otherwise might not have been. Same thing goes for, tracking your return on your investment by analyzing conversion rates, enabling continuous improvement with your marketing strategies. And then content itself, whether you're using it for social media or charts or graphs or any kind of pitches that you might be putting together, press releases, podcasts, all of this can be done very simply with the way in which you can actually have AI create content. And then when it comes to sales and driving new business, you can actually have dynamic pricing, and that AI can adjust the pricing based on demand fluctuations, based on what competitor pricing might look like at that given time, market conditions, all different kinds of, seasonality, sales events, all of that can be factored in to create that dynamic pricing model. Customer segmentation, this is going to let you, look at past purchasing behavior and then know that these, purchasing patterns you can then integrate with, this, say, particular client of yours or customer might purchase, this particular item at this time of year. You would have that in advance and begin to start marketing or beginning that sales, direction at that same time. Also, lots of different ideas for upselling. And if there are anything that might go wrong, any potential delays or disruptions in the supply chain, by using AI, you can get a heads up. And so you can proactively communicate that to your client or customer and adjust their expectations, which is just a great way of making sure that you hang on to those clients for the long haul. And then we talked about chatbots and working with your employees, but you can also use these chatbots to actually handle customer inquiries, answer questions, and get questions answered more quickly. They could get an order status, perhaps. And these chatbots, by the way, can speak in almost any language or dialect. So this is going to open up opportunities for you to kind of, if you haven't already, if you're not working on an international scale, or you looking to expand into another country where, English might not be, or if you have employees that English isn't their first language, all of these chatbots are available in just about every language. It also speeds up response times so that your employees, your customer service folks might be able to work on higher level issues or more complex issues. And all these customer service chatbots, by the way, are based on existing content that you already have and are fairly easy to train. This is a video of an actual avatar, which you can turn actual real people into chatbots. So if you didn't want to have a chatbot that was just text-based, you wanted to have like a real person appear to be like a customer service rep. This is how good the avatars have become of recent. The person, by the way, that's going to speak first is a real person, and the second person speaking is an avatar trained off of that first person. So I'm just going to pause here and let you listen to this.
There is so much noise out there, and so that's why I've curated all of this into a simple step-by-step guide. These days, how you show up online is the new handshake. It's the first impression you give to your podcast audience, your clients, your employees, your students.
So pretty hard to detect. And by the way, this is last year's technology that can do this. So nowadays, these avatars and these voices are becoming really, really, hard to distinguish. So it's a kind of a nice way to interact with clients if you're looking to move in this direction. And by the way, AI can help with proposals, letters, reports, market research, data analysis. It can review legal contracts and budgets. It can help you in a negotiation and give you ideas on how to handle objections. For a long time, it's been easily recapping meeting, providing next steps. That's built into pretty much Microsoft Teams and Zoom and lots of other tools. But I also highly recommend you include AI in any of your brainstorming, because the AI is actually like I talked about that move on the Go board earlier, because it's thinking above and beyond ways that our human brains typically think. So it can actually bring a lot of new ideas to the table when you do incorporate AI into any brainstorming efforts. And best of all, it can really help reduce any repetitive task. So let's dive into a couple of real world AI use cases. And by the way, there are dozens and dozens of these use cases. So we've just plucked out 2 here for the sake of time. But the first one is a company, Finks Robotics, and they worked with a major UK grocery retailer to implement a combination of software coordinated with autonomous warehouse robots. And this was all designed to increase productivity and profit margins. And that's exactly what it did. They got a 4 times increase in productivity and a 2 times increase in profit margins. And it lowered deployment costs. So the key takeaway is that this was a really great AI use case. It allowed the seamless collaboration between the robotic systems, and it led to extreme significant efficiency gains. And these are the kinds of gains that you can get even with small AI projects that will really create that early on success to allow you to drive future implementation of additional AI projects. Another company, Kinerica, predictive analytics for e-commerce warehouse. So it worked with a leading e-commerce warehouse here in the US to adopt predictive analytics to optimize their logistics. And what the results were better demand forecasting. It reduced a lot of excess inventory and stockouts. They had lower operational costs through optimized resource allocations, and it improved efficiencies in their warehouse decision making. So again, an excellent use case for predictive analytics, and it allowed the warehouses to become more agile and more cost effective. And we see these sort of success stories over and over and over again. So it's a really great, some of these are just some of the early on first steps that you can take with AI to begin to get your feet wet, begin to understand how these new solutions can be adopted, and the kind of solutions that are going to really drive the best return on investment for your organization or business. But there are some barriers, and we want to be upfront about what those barriers and even those dangers could be. So with that said, we're going to kick it off with some myths. And these are myths for sure, because a lot of businesses out there are thinking, well, AI is moving too fast. It's better to wait until it's 100%. I can tell you right now, having been in this space for a very long time, AI is going to be constantly evolving. It's going to feel like it's always moving too fast, at least for the next 10 years or more. It's just going to continually be evolving. A lot of people think it's too expensive and they're going to wait till the costs drop. Well, the pricing models are all over the board these days. But if you don't start doing this now and begin to, implement some of these initiatives now, it's actually going to work as a disadvantage to you later, because people are thinking, it's only for large corporations, or it's only for the tech savvy workers or the tech savvy businesses, and that's maybe just not us. Well, think of it like with all new technologies, if you don't introduce it early, even if it's small, you really are, I kind of use this kind of exercise analogy. You're letting your employees sort of, their muscles, are going to atrophy over time. Whereas your competitors, if they're getting their feet wet now and early, they're working those muscles out. They're getting ready for the big race. And you don't want that race to hit your doorstep and have your staff, your employees, or your systems and your data to not be ready and to have atrophied. You want to make sure that you are positioning yourself for all of these new technologies as they unravel, so that you're able to step in and take advantage of the things that are going to work best for you as you evolve into this space. We talked about data a lot, and I just will summarize it by saying if you are working off of bad data, it's going to hurt you more than it's going to help you. It is really important as a first step going into any AI initiative that you make sure that you have some kind of data assessment to look at your data to make sure it's in a healthy, usable kind of setup. You also want to make sure that your organization and your employees are trained on good data hygiene habits and procedures, so that even if you get your data cleaned up, if you don't have the right processes and procedures in place, it could, kind of fall apart again. So you got to make sure that you've got those procedures established. And also be careful about how your employees might be using your current data. So they may potentially be already out there using some of these large language models. And in that case, if they're using, especially the ones that are in an unprotected environment, they could be uploading some of your sensitive data to a large language model without you knowing it. And that's kind of giving away maybe some of your intellectual property at some point. Another downfall of AI is that it's really hard for us to understand how an AI came up with an answer. It's still very much what they call black box thinking. That's not a physical black box. It's just a term that's used to say, no matter how far back you peel the layers, it's really hard to figure out how the AI provided the answer that it came up with, because it's frankly thinking beyond the ways in which humans think. Now, one of the things that's helping mitigate this is the newer large language models are oftentimes citing the resources and where they acquired the information for that particular piece of advice or for that direction. So when you see those citations, make sure you click on them and look at it. Or if they're not providing citations, put that in your prompt that you'd like to cite the resources. So at least you have a little bit of a glimpse as to how it's coming up with the answer that it came up with. And then there are certain large language models that will show the chain of thought, so it'll actually break down how it actually arrived at the answer that it came up with, but it's still not at a granular level. So you have to kind of still have that trust. Hallucinations, this is a term that is simply used in the AI space to say this is when AI gets it wrong. And it will write a very eloquent answer for you, but it could be completely false. So it's important to mitigate this by writing extremely strong prompts. The better your prompt is, the less likely it will hallucinate. You want to make sure you're checking facts and you're asking the large language models to cite references. And this is going to get better with time. These large language models are actually hallucinating less and less these days. There's going to be deep fakes out there. Let me just play these for a little bit.
What would art be like without emotions? It would be empty.
So that's a company called OmniHuman that basically you can upload any photograph and attach a voice to it, and it will actually make the photograph look like a video. This is going to be happening more and more. People can actually capture 3 seconds of your voice and they can mimic your voice. So this is creating lots of opportunities for phone scams. If you are a parent, you might be concerned or that your child or your sibling or whatever could call you someday and it's going to sound exactly like them, but it's actually not them. So as a public service announcement, I always tell people, go out into your backyards, keep all your electronics, away from you at the time in your house. And then when you're in the backyard, come up with some secret code word, because that's really the only way you're going to be able to identify a family member over the phone in the future, particularly if they're asking for money. So that's more the reason to ask for the passcode. But once a fake is seen, like these fakes, sometimes it's really hard for people to not believe it was a fake, especially when it's a video. So you don't want to, you want to make sure you're protecting your business along this way as well. And then cybersecurity, unfortunately, fraud GPT is out there. Some of the, we have the way in which AI can, the average hacker is now an expert hacker. So it's pretty undetectable almost, but you've got to make sure that you're using AI to actually help you make sure that you're protecting your businesses now more than ever, and making sure that you're training your staff as well. But there are some emerging trends. There's agentic AI. That's a big one. You're going to hear more and more about that. There's new materials that are being developed. The companies like the large language models that are built for biologists that can actually create new innovations in the materials science space. And this is also creating new medicines and new vaccines and things like that. But these new materials are going to be, they're, out there and going to potentially impact your businesses, because it could create lighter materials. It could create materials that can be stored, don't need to be in, kind of refrigeration storage. So all of these new advancements are actually going to benefit your businesses. Self-learning warehouse ecosystems. This is another big advancement, where you're optimizing the ecosystem of the warehouse. Circular economy integrations. That's another big advancement for the future. Human-centric AI collaboration interfaces. This is using augmented reality to really help work through. They're even talking about brain-computer interfaces with working in conjunction with exoskeletons. So lots of cool stuff in that space. And then swarm robotics, using things like Stigmergy, which is like an ant colony-inspired communication system. And that's designed to, achieve better traffic flow throughout a centrally controlled system. And then there's the future of robotics. These are getting more and more agile, more and more human-like. So it's just important to keep pace with what's going on in this space as well. But if you're looking at ways in which you can get started with this right now, there are a couple of steps. First and foremost, you want to conduct an AI assessment. And this is assessing your security, your data. What are the opportunities? What are the first steps you should take? Which AI is going to align best with your goals and boost your productivity? And then you ideally want to have a matrix of options that you can visualize. You also want to do a vendor analysis. You want to make sure that your vendors are protecting your data, and they're integrating with your current tech, and that they're going to be there for the long haul to provide support. And then you want to build an AI governance model so that you can manage all the risks about AI alongside the innovations. So you want to make sure you've got employee policies that are in place to make sure that employees know which large language models and which AI tools they can and cannot work with, and which ones are going to protect your data and information. You want to get an oversight committee established. And this is sort of made up of different people throughout your organization that will act as sort of a body to oversee all of these AI initiatives and track them. You want to make sure you're defining your principles, that you're, showing fairness, transparency, and accountability throughout all of your different initiatives, and that you're constantly looking back on these policies and these practices so that they're staying kind of in touch with the latest technological advancements. And then at the end of the day, you ultimately want to have an AI roadmap. Now, it's important in this roadmap that you secure executive support. You don't want sort of AI initiatives bubbling up from your employee base, because that's probably not going to align necessarily with your goals. So you want to make sure it's a very coordinated effort. And if you can secure that top-down approach, it'll make sure that it's aligning with the objectives and the goals of the organization, and that you're selecting those right first use cases. Make sure they're use cases that are affordable, that integrate with your current technology, and that are going to give you sort of an early win in this phasing of AI. Again, the data quality, can't stress that enough. You ideally over time want to build a skilled team of AI experts. You might not have that team in place because it's a cyber expert, a data expert, an AI expert, but you want to have, and you also want to have people who understand Copilot. So if you don't have that in place now, that's a great area to help outsource, to give you sort of that expertise when and where you need it. And then start piloting these initiatives. Don't be afraid to, start out with a small pilot and then scale the ones that are really working for you. And then it all boils down to adapting your workforce to AI. This is going to be, a lot of kind of change for a lot of your employees, and frankly, for every industry sector is going through this same level of change. So you got to make sure that you prioritize training, any kind of upskilling initiatives. This is the time more than ever to invest in your workforce and to build their confidence up in working with, these new AI tools. You want to make sure that you're building these collaborative work environments so that there's, it's not humans versus robots, it's humans and robots working together when you are integrating these new technologies. And by the way, these robots are going to help make things safer for your human workers, because you can give those physically demanding or hazardous tasks to the robots. And that's going to actually allow your, human employees to sit back and go, I feel safer at work today. And that might even help with, keeping those better employees over time through workforce, job enrichment. You want to make sure that those tedious tasks are also being done by the AI, so that you've got your workers focusing on the more, strategic initiatives or the more high level types of thinking. And then it's all boiling down to how you communicate the benefits of AI. You got to make sure that, there's going to be a sort of a common thread of understanding where, most people are going to think, well, a robot's going to replace me. But you've got to come up with whatever your, kind of position is going to be on that. And if it is a position where the AI is going to be working hand in hand with those human workers, you want to set that understanding up front and repeat it often. And that's going to create the confidence and allow people to not feel like, well, I don't want to train a robot to do that. It could replace me someday. You really want to make sure that people understand that you're going to maintain a human in the loop, so that the efficiencies of these robotics or these other AI processes are working at their best, and that human oversight is what's going to ensure it at the end of the day. And then you want to sort of, have this continuous innovation and a mindset towards continuously innovating. And that might be equipping your workers with augmented reality devices or exoskeletons or any other technologies that are going to enhance their abilities. And this is all going to grow to build a better organization over time. And finally, you want to experiment and learn. There are a lot of free versions, tokens, trials, and things that you can go out and kind of test drive some of these AI features. Make sure that when you are test driving it, you're not using real data from your organization. Maybe create some bogus data sets or what we call synthetic data to just see, kind of see how it works. Make sure, that the use case you think it's working in will actually work in the way that you envision it. And then after you've tested and experimented with these, make sure you're really working with different prompts so that you're helping to mitigate any bias or hallucinations along the way. And by the way, over time, you will become an expert. You're going to increase your confidence in working with these tools. You yourself may become an expert in this. And as you increase your expertise, you want to make sure you're always sharing what you learn, because there's a lot of information to absorb out there. So we're all going to literally have to be lifelong learners in this new age of AI. And with that said, we will open it up to some Q&A. Great. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Anne, for that super interesting and informative presentation. Just want to make a quick note that this recording will be available upon request. If you want to reach out to Cindy Atkinson, her contact information is in the chat here, and will also be on Hartman's website within the next couple of weeks. We did have one question submitted ahead of time for you, Anne, and that is, what small advancements like cycle counts, order and load documentation can we expect in the near future? Do we expect the technology gap to grow as companies invest in AI resources and smaller companies may not be able to compete?
So the kind of the list of technologies that are evolving there, you can pretty much envision that AI is going to impact almost every layer of your business. So that's, instead of workers stopping everything to count items once a month, they could be using tablets or smart glasses to count stuff while they're doing their regular job. So there's, opportunities for things to happen sort of in tandem with each other. Paperwork is going to become more digital and digitized. The equipment's going to become smarter around you. Product placements are going to be more strategically kind of placed. And then using voice commands and things like that throughout an organization is going to increase your overall technology and allow for those efficiencies to start to take root. But when it comes to whether or not, as a small or mid-sized company, you're going to fall behind because these larger entities are definitely going to have deeper pockets to implement maybe some of the more sophisticated kinds of things. Look for opportunities and niches where you can stand out. You can also be, if you think about it, when iPhones first came out, not everybody could afford them, so it wasn't like, everyone, maybe only the wealthy people got the fancy phones, or so it's going to maybe start out where only this, kind of the wealthier, warehouses are going to buy the fancier warehouse robots. But keep in mind, these technologies are constantly evolving. So as you kind of begin to enter this space, you might be able to find niches and opportunities that other people have invested in other technologies, and you can maybe take advantage of a newer technology or just a more strategic way of using that technology for your particular use case. So just be smart about the technology that you buy. Make sure you set up that roadmap so that you know that you're kind of rolling out the technology that's best suited for your organization first. And it's going to give you that first, those early ROI, returns on investment, back to your group.
Great. Thank you, Anne. Any other questions today? I think you covered it, Anne. And just wanted people to know that someone from the Hartman team will be reaching out, following up with you to see if you do have any further questions or if you'd like to discuss this presentation in further detail. We look forward to connecting with everyone.
Great. Well, thank you all for coming. I appreciate the opportunity to share these insights with you, and feel free to reach out if you have questions.
Thanks, Anne. Thanks, everyone.
Take care.